Hey gang, welcome back to another video. With the recent addition of the for sale sign to our cemetery gate, I thought I'd take this opportunity to work on another gate-related project that's been on my to-do list for years. So in this video, I'll show you how I made some realistic vines to really up the creepiness factor of our gate. And the best part? The supply list is only 3 items long, so let's get into it. As you can see, there's not a lot to this build, but the most important thing you'll need is some jute rope. I'm using 1/2 inch, but if you wanted thinner vines, you could use 1/4 inch rope instead. You'll also need some 2mm twine, some brown silicone caulk, coconut mulch, and optionally some floral wire. With that out of the way, let's get started on the main part of the build. My plan is to weave the vines through our cemetery gate. So to make sure I've got enough coverage, I need to cut myself roughly 10 feet of rope from this bundle. Each gate panel is roughly 3 feet wide and about 7 feet on the diagonal, so 10 feet seemed like a nice round number for my vine. Although you could argue that in this case, more could be better. But for now, this is what I'm working with. Once I have the length of rope cut, I can start unraveling it. I'll unwind all but the last 2 to 3 feet of rope, breaking it into 2 paths, one thin and one thick. In hindsight, I could have unraveled the entire length of rope and just tied it back together in sections, but this will still get me to where I want to be, and I can save that approach for the next time I need to make vines. Once 8 feet of rope is unraveled, I grabbed the twine and tied off the rope to prevent it from unwinding any further. This step will get repeated a ton during this project, so it's a good idea to have a few pre-cut pieces of twine at the ready. The next thing I'll do is to unravel about half of the thicker side of my split rope and cut off a few feet. This can be as much or as little as you'd like, but the intention is to create forks in the vine of varying lengths and thicknesses. So you could leave it longer and it would give you the ability to make even more splits in your vine, or shorter for less. It all just depends on what look you're after. But because our haunt is dimly lit, I figured it made more sense for these vines to be a bit chunkier so that they'd be easier to see. This step gets repeated again until I'm left with a few branches, with each being a different thickness and length from unwinding the rope and tying it off at various points. With the main vine figured out, I can take any of the offcuts and attach them back to the main rope to give it even more shape. And rather than just tying them on with a simple knot, I'll use some more of the twine wrapped around the 2 pieces to help bind them together. This ensures that they're not going to come loose, but more importantly, helps to soften the transition so that it looks more organic. I'll repeat this step a few times, and once everything is joined together, I can do a bit more unraveling and a bit of trimming. One of the keys to making these vines look realistic is to take every opportunity to make it uneven. In this case, I'm trimming off bits and pieces here and there to make sure that there aren't any blunt ends, where all of the rope is exactly the same length. It doesn't have to be every little strand, but making sure the larger groups of rope get addressed will make the finished product that much better. Now that I've unraveled, tied, unraveled some more, and trimmed, I can get to the messy part. I put down a disposable drop cloth on my bench and grabbed the brick of coconut mulch, which will give our vines a more interesting and less rope-like texture. The mulch comes vacuum packed and needs to be broken up into a bucket before I can use it. I'm trying to catch all of the clumps and keep working it until it looks kind of like fine ground coffee. This will get set aside for later, it's just important to do it before this next much messier step. At this point, I grabbed the vines and spread them out onto my bench along with some brown outdoor rated silicone caulk, which I dispensed onto the drop cloth, and with gloved hands got to massaging it into the rope fibers. As you can see, it's already starting to look like vines, especially as I start to pull apart the smaller strands of rope. Thankfully, this process goes by pretty quickly and helps you to see what your finished product is going to look like. When the rope was thoroughly covered in silicone, I grabbed my bucket of coconut mulch and shook it over the vines, making sure to work it into the silicone before it loses its tackiness. I found that pouring the mulch out onto the bench and rolling the vines over it gave me the best coverage, and anywhere that wasn't sticking or where the vines still looked too much like rope, got a bit more silicone and mulch. If you felt like your vines weren't dense enough, you could add more rope and twine to the existing vine and apply the silicone and coconut mulch to it. Just make sure that you really work the silicone into the added vines to ensure a strong bond. With the vines fully coated, I set them out in the sun for a bit, and when I felt like the silicone had set up, I put them back onto my bench so that I could add a bit of color. I like the idea of there being some kind of mossy look to these vines, so I grabbed a chartreuse acrylic craft paint, which got a few drops of brown acrylic paint to help tone down the brightness, and then I could do a bit of random dry brushing to the vines. Now this isn't necessary, but I think it adds some character and prevents them from looking too flat. And considering that people will see these in the dark, anything I can do to create some variation is going to help them to stand out. It's particularly hot today, so it didn't take long for these to dry, so the only thing to do now is to get them installed.
Now there's one more addition I want to make to our cemetery gate before we set up, but I'll save that one for another time. That's going to do it for this one. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, but most importantly, go make something.